here. I'm going to be going over a few move orders. One is through d5 and one is through Nimzo Indian. So it should fit whatever you play. This is the d5 move order. Although it starts with knight f6, we would transpose if we started with e5, c4, e6, enter this structure, which is a transposition into what we have here. So this is what the Carlsbad pawn structure is. Our pawns are pointing towards the king side, their pawns are pointing towards the queen side. This is kind of where all the play lies. So I also have one for the Caro-Kann. The plans are a bit different because the bishop's placement here is quite off. It's usually supposed to be placed on e2 when you're playing black against the queen's gambit. So there are some subtleties that I'll go over here. Bishop e7 to break the pin. And also an alternative would be bishop f5, but in my opinion, I do not like this line above, let's say, 2000, because most of your opponents will know the endgame with queen f3. They'll go into this endgame where they're just gonna pile on the f5 square, and it's gonna be really hard to get any sort of play. There's been plenty of games. Carlsen Kramnik is one that I would recommend looking at, but you can just play for this square and you'll have a very comfortable game as white. So I would not recommend this. Bishop e7. Queen c2, in my opinion, is the most challenging move because it does prevent any sort of bishop f5 ideas. For example, if they commit to knight f3, now we can play bishop f5 because there is no queen f3. This is the main, reason why queen c2 is played. It prevents our bishop coming out to its most active square in these structures. Castles is my recommendation. You can also start with knight b to d7. They both transpose. h6 kind of poking, and rook e8 supporting trading off this powerful bishop here. Knight g2 is the main move. I will go over what happens if they play knight f3 a bit later, but you tend to equalize in those positions and be slightly better sometimes. Knight b to d7, castles, and knight e4. Now, below 2500, this is mainly when I do go into Carlsbad, what I use to equalize. Knight e4, takes, supporting the e3 pawn because they want to push f3 and e4. And then I just have a quick sample line of why e4 is bad, but this doesn't really matter. G6 is also another plan to look out for. For example, knight f3, knight b to d7, castles, rook e8, h3, and you bring the knight over to g7, and the point is to trade off your problem piece here. Because the light squared bishop is the problem here, so you play to trade it off, basically, in most of these lines. Some other interesting lines include knight f3. We develop our bishop out of the pawn chain. Bishop d3 is most common. Trades. Knight b to d7. This is a prophylactic move I included against any sort of minority attack, but for example, the ideas are basically the same. Knight e4, trading off the bishop. Let's say they continue going for this minority attack. Alvin, would it be possible if you can mute? Thank you. Knight takes knight. And this very important move in a lot of these structures, knight d6, preventing the minority attack because they no longer have the b5 move that is kind of nasty, leaving us with a backward c-pawn. Ways to generate kingside attack, I definitely have somewhere else, but for piece placement as white now, just in case if you're a Queen's Gambit player, I don't want you to wait the whole time. CD, CD, bishop g5, c6, e3, bishop e7, knight f3. Again, I think this is inaccurate because you can never play for the f3, e4 plans that are quite dangerous. For example, f3, g6, e4, and you just have a lot more central space than your opponent. It says it scores slightly better for black, but I kind of doubt this because it's not easy to play against. Anyway, form, there are some knight jumps you have to look out for. For example, knight g4 is a very common one because they're trying to argue that your dark squares are going to be weak because you did play f3. But in my opinion, these positions are always slightly better for white. And here I also have some ways to what a successful minority attack looks like. For example, they bring the knight over. Maybe they're going for some g6, knight g7, bishop f5 ideas, but doesn't matter. We can just continue with our idea to create a weak c-pawn. Here, theoretically, any endgame, in any which way we trade off pieces, will be slightly beneficial for us because they don't have good control over the c5 square, so we can pluck a knight here. It's kind of an outposted square if we trade off the knight here, and this pawn is just very weak, so it's very easy to target. Some ideas could include like bishop f5 to trade off the light squared bishop, because it is one of the main defenders of this c6 pawn. So that is definitely an idea. Arrows. Now for black.
Can I ask a quick question in the previous position?
Which one? Here?
Yes. Can black play c5?
I don't think so. I mean, it looks like you can even play bishop takes knight here, and it looks... They just lose the pawn. No. Let me do some concrete calculation here, because it does not look like you can play c5. I would assume this also would just win. For example, a line would go like... This looks kind of problematic. So I don't think c5 can be played. You have to time it quite well as black. I do have some lines here that include a very early c5, if I remember correctly. It's bishop f4, c5. This is now an IQP. We've transformed the position. And my recommendation in positions like this is just bishop f5 to trade off pieces, and usually trading off pieces in the IQP is good. Plus their knight is now kind of passive because they don't have the time to really rotate it over to active squares. Plus you're almost forcing them to get rid of their bishop pair. So I don't think this is quite beneficial for them. Any more questions pertaining to some positions in here? Otherwise, I'll just go over the model game, which is Kasparov, Vladimir. As you can see, he opts for Nimzo move order, where the knight has to be committed to f3. So there's no chance of these f3, e4 plans in the future. Okay, bishop g5. A very similar position to have in the study. And he opts for this interesting move g6, which the main idea is just to exchange your bad piece. Okay. He continues with this plan. This is a very nice prophylactic move because he wants to meet any sort of 5 with c5, and now the IQP will come into effect, but there's some tactics here, if I remember correctly. Like rook d1, bishop takes knight, just wins on the spot. But learning when to time c5, because you can often meet b4 with c5, it's interesting. Usually I would say that your pieces have to be quite active, though. If the knight is still on f8, I wouldn't do it, because you do want to have the option to recapture with a knight. Caro Khan is also here. There are some lines for our Caro Khan players. This is quite a common move at amateur level. It's actually quite dangerous, but you can just play this move, or this interesting move, g6, or you can play the most principled, which is e5. But this gives you an IQP, and I don't know how comfortable people here are with playing the IQP. But you do technically get the bishop pair if you so want. But knight f3, bishop f5, you trade, and eventually you're going to be able to trade most of the pieces, and even if they try to play against the minority attack, you're just going to get it anyway, 95% of the time. b4 is coming next, and you're just going to have a very healthy endgame, and even triple up on the c file. If you do have the pawn majority, what you usually want to do is, like, for example, you don't want to trade pieces when you have this pawn majority, because the endgame is pretty much always going to be bad for you. Also, how to meet this f3 e4 plan. Bishop e6, like e4 here. It's not well timed because there is actually black to play and gain an advantage. It's not this right here, but this is an alternative. Well, it's not the move here. They didn't play the correct move, so.
Is it c5 now?
No, not here. I mean, it definitely is a candidate move, but you have a more tactical shot. I mean, c5, my problem is you're probably just losing spot. But
You-
the move here is actually queen b4. Because there's not really a great way to protect this pawn. So let's just say this is forced to protect the pawn. Black to play and win. Or not win, but again gain a match.
Rook d8 maybe?
No. It's something to do with how white's pieces are coordinated in the center.
Knight g4.
This pawn is now indefensible. Scoop this up, and you're just much better here. So this is why e4 isn't well timed. A better move would be the prophylactic queen f2. And now you kind of just, you play c5 here. Now it's a good move because there's no pressure on this pawn. You get some sort of equal position where you can kind of just shuffle around. Nothing much is really going to be done here. I don't see how white can play for more. I mean, it seems like it's just going to be a draw. As black, that's a pretty decent result. Of course, this is 20 moves in, so you're definitely going to get positions where your opponent is going to think they're going to gain a significant advantage after e4, but you always have these sort of jumps. Like, there is a line where the dark squared bishop can be harassed with knight g4. Caro-Kann is... do I have in Caro-Kann? I also have some attacking ideas that work here. Example CD. This is a very nice way, in my opinion, to attack below, like, international master level, in my opinion. G6, interesting move. Again, this idea exists everywhere. 96, knight g7, bishop f5 to get rid of the problem piece. But you can play in this very interesting way. f4. And sort of just... you can play this in a lot of different positions, too. You don't need to play this rook b1, rook e1. You can even maybe consider this here. I just don't know how accurate it is. It's definitely a move. And just play f4. Problem is this pawn may be weak. I do remember a game between like Hikaru and other player, some other strong GM, where he played like this, but I cannot remember it off the top of my head. But this also exists in the Caro-Kann. If you can just imagine it. For example, it's an inaccurate move. I mean, the moves aren't that easy anyway. White. Easier plan here would just be, for example, b4, b5, and isolating this pawn. I'm just trying to think of an example where you can just play knight e4. Example after bishop e3, I'm wondering if it's possible. I wonder what plan the computer gives. I can almost guarantee you this is a pretty standard position that b4 is given here. Oh, my computer decided to give up on me. Fortunate. Or it's my mouse. Either my computer or my mouse. But b4, b5, b4, and taking here, some sort of pressuring this pawn is always quite strong. Oh, thank you for the game. Chess will comply, I'll definitely add it. Chess will not comply with me. Fortunate. Very annoying. Oh, you could send the game link, maybe. C is a CM. Yeah, Pillsbury Knight is with f4. No, I did say knight e4, but usually it's knight e4, f4, or f5 in Caro-Kann. For example, I'm trying to remember a game where this was played. I know that I know that white lost, but I know they had a good position, so I'm trying to remember it. Maybe I'm misremembering the move order. But yeah, you can definitely play like this, f4, h3, g4, and just attack on the king side. The way to respond to that would be to try to trade pieces as black. There is also a plan with knight h5 that I want to remember. Explain because it is a funny resource. I think is quite interesting. It's like to force a trade of bishops, but I don't remember exactly why. As you can see, knight h5 is definitely a move here. I'm just trying to remember why. And how does the knight re-enter the game? I remember playing this in a rapid game. Uh, hmm. This isn't a move. No, it's knight h5. I haven't seen this as a move because I would assume they'd be able to like castle long because you'd be providing them a tempo. Ah, I remember now. It's to basically remove this bishop so they can't go for the f3 e4 plan. Um, because this pawn is weak and it's not very easy to defend. For example, f3 would just drop a pawn now. That's the point. So if you really do want to avoid f3 e4 in all your games, you can go knight h5. Because this is basically forced unless they want to drop back, and this is kind of anytime they play f3 now, they would just be met with takes and some queen d6, bishop d6, queen g. That is the point. Okay. Knight h5 is just to trade pieces. It's no, that's not the reason. It's to prevent f3 e4 plan. For example, if we go down the main line, you'll see that this plan can actually be quite annoying if timed correctly, because it leads to either sort of a dry position, or let's say you play inaccurately after queen f2 and you play something like rook c8 and you get hit with e4, suddenly the position is not that easy, you know. Suddenly you may have knight g4 here as like a tempo gaining move, but you don't have many ways to really gain tempo anymore. I've seen bishop e5 been tried. Yeah, that's definitely a move. Air. Assuming here, and some sort of bishop e6, bishop e5. But some sort of knight d7 would just be fine now. Or c5 immediately. Like for example, a good like this may be a decent example. I think you could even get away with some sort of f5 here. Short castles. Down on this square, and then there's no f3 4 plan. Yeah, the entire point of knight h5 here is just to prevent this plan at all costs, from what I know. c5 or bishop, just fine. Very annoying to defend. Here you just give up far too many squares. For example, this could lead to trouble, but nobody's playing bishop e2 here. Bishop f6 is also good. Maybe. Bishop f6 can definitely be a good try here. I would be afraid of them just taking here and saying it comes check, so wouldn't play it, but if you prepare it properly, it could be okay. Coach tree has spawned in. I mean, I already went over how to... I should probably go over how, like, more prophylactic moves of how to prevent a minority attack. Like, for example, knight f3. This is one of the moves in knight e4, knight d6, but let's just say, for example, they like... What did they even do? Can't take. Other than knight d6, what if they prepare to take with knight d2? Okay. Oh, this also is a decent example. This is a Pillsbury knight here. The knight is just, you just solidify the knight in the center, and if a lot of cases, if they've committed, like if they try to pluck their knight back in the center because they said you've overextended, you can play very aggressively and get a decent attack going. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this is... Example. This is completely playable plan if they allow it. Yeah, I already explained the knight on d6. The pawn on a6 is another way. But yeah, here I have the knight retreating back to d6, preventing b5. I feel like a6 isn't really a way to prevent it. It's kind of just, like for example, a5 is played here. For example, a6, a4, and they're still getting the minority attack. And maybe knight d6. Hmm. Oh, wait, there's a tactic here. Okay, well, that's obvious. Okay. David, could you explain why a6 is good? other than like the tactical detail here, because I don't understand. It seems like a waste of the tempo. I feel like a5 is useful because it forces them to play a3 and b4. I think that would be very instructive. Yes, it is a very difficult strategy. I would love for you to explain the point of a6 here, because it is the most played move. I just don't understand it. Other than tactically, I suppose. But like, just check the engine. What if you... It always exists. Oh, interesting. I feel like knight back to d6 is slightly more active defense, because it just prevents this. Yes, I see that. I know the b6 knight goes to c4, but yeah, I haven't seen that before. a1. Knight c4 is definitely a way to prevent. But again, I just like the look of knight d6 here. Or again, just this f5 idea. You're mating. Very weird subtleties in terms of strategy. But that's the main way to prevent the minority attack. It's other way around and through Nimzo move order. f3. Bishop f5. Hmm. Yeah, I feel like these are slightly more structurally healthy for black, simply due to the fact that I don't have the problem with the flexibility here. There's less flexibility. But through these move orders, I definitely recommend just sort of 95 f4. Trade a ton of pieces. You should have minority here. Very interesting.
Isn't the pawn just hanging like on h7?
That's fair, I completely missed that. Because 96, well that's, well, okay. What is a candidate move here? That is to trade bishops. Bishop h5 is logical though. I mean, maybe g6. Now continue with this plan. Square. Let's see how this game was played, because this might. This just seems like the dream for white. We go back to piece placement as white. Look kind of similar. I have nothing more to really explain here. Just minority, prophylaxis against the minority, and different ways to pluck your knight in the center. How to solve the problem of your bad bishop in a lot of these lines. Different plans of how to solve the problem of your bad bishop, for example. This way, it's eventually going to get out. This way, where they choose an inaccurate move order. G6 also. Gets equality. So achieves equality here. Could you go over QGD exchange model games where people stop the minority attack? Okay, let's find a few. This might be instructive. So first we'd have to choose a move order. I'm going to assume most people here play knight f6 to stay flexible, but if you play d5, just let me know and I'll find something through this move order. This would just allow bishop e4. Actually, wait, let me go through some move order mistakes. I forgot to mention this, that I just flipped word. Actually, no, this comes from d4, d5 move order. Here they can take, but if you're black, you should not fear this structure, because now you don't have to commit your knight to f6 and allow bishop g5. So you can just kind of relax here. So you solve the problem of your bad bishop very early, and this kind of poses no venom here. So this exchange here is inaccurate. What am I doing? Anyway, see f3, d5, knight c now, bishop e7, takes, bishop g5, c6, castles. What if queen c2 here? This looks interesting. G6 plan is what we opt for. Seven castles, rook ab1. So the main way is a5 to force this sort of tempo loss, and then you kind of just continue with your day normally. And calculate something. Yeah, so again, also, this is... I played a cheater one time, and I actually blundered this. This tactic exists quite often. But yeah, rook a3 is definitely... When your knight is here, some sort of tension between these two knights, rook a3 is definitely a nasty move. That tactically prevents b5 from being played, so queen c2 is played, and now knight d6. So this is the way you defend against the minority, which I kind of explained earlier. There's not really many ways to defend other than through a5 and knight d6, and what David explained in the chat over here with some a6 ideas. I really have nothing more to explain here. I mean, I could go
now,
over... I could
yeah,
go
but
over
now
some move orders in Carlsbad. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
in the previous position, this one, the
Model?
model game we were going over. Yes.
Yes, here.
If they go b5, after
Go
b5,
b5
like
anyway.
yeah, b5 anyways. Do you push c5 or do you like let's
I mean,
plant your knight
c5.
on c4?
I mean, gives probably c4 here. bc, bc, but they have... The problem now is that they just have no way to attack this pawn. That's kind of... I mean, they could maybe fight for control like this, or...
But in the end game, is the pawn still weak?
Well,
You think?
yes, the thing is, like, there's kind of... For example... Possible? If we were to go here and allow this sort of endgame, then yes. But, like, I feel like... Decent amount of compensation here late in the game. Rook back. Takes. So most of the play seems to be on the queen side here. The pawn is technically weak, but let's see. The knight on c4, nothing is kind of touching it, unless they want to weaken their own pawns by going knight e4, which in that case you would exchange. This pawn would be weak, and any attempts to reinforce it would probably weaken this pawn. So... So pawn. Yeah, there's no good way to also exchange these knights. I mean, maybe there's a way to prepare it like this, but maybe you're getting in on the queen side with queen a2 or something. These positions are very static. Like, there's not really a lot to go over here. They're just very, like, well, if you keep your knight here, how are they ever going to attack your c6 pawn? It's kind of shielded, no? Oh, yeah, I explained 95 here. Basically, here you would take, and now they'd have a weak e-pawn. Like, for example, you could target it with, like, queen e7 or something. Okay. Or you would go here, preventing e5 in the first place, which I think is the most practical way to do it. But
Wait, so
again,
sorry. So is White's plan here is to attack the weak c6 pawn?
yeah, but they
So
have no way to attack it. This is the
that's
problem.
so that's
Like, getting the knight to c4 kind of blocks it from this direction, and something would have to go really wrong for, like, you to allow some sort of infiltration like this. I just
So
don't think this is
the weakness of
very
C6
easy.
is fine.
Yeah, the weakness is fine because they have no way to attack it.
And then what's the plan for black? What is black trying to attack right here?
I couldn't tell you. It's just so static. It's just so static. Like, this is going to be a draw 9 times out of 10.
Mhm.
Like, for example, the way that white lost this game was getting super overzealous with e4 here and trying to push for too much. Maybe they're in a situation where it's like a must-win game for a norm or something, but like you just no, nobody should make this type of mistake. You should just know that this is a draw and kind of play it that way.
Mhm.
I don't see a way. Maybe some stronger titled players here, David, could explain how to grind these positions for like 10 hours, but I can't. I'm not strong enough to play in any sort of grind here. Computer instead of e4 recommends some sort of rook b1 and then rook a2. Now, but like the difference now here is that this is now an IQP, and this pawn may be weak, but now they have a weak pawn. So this transformation of the structure doesn't hurt us too poorly, per se. I don't see the dynamic play here. Freeran is good at calculation. I don't know how good he's at structural weaknesses. He does play Caro-Kann, or he did play Caro-Kann almost exclusively, but he's very, very good at calculation. Well, yeah, this is apparently just a dead draw, I would assume. This. You liquidate into this drawn position. Yeah, to defend against a minority attack, knight e4, knight d6. A5 to prevent any sort of very quick b4. The structure is played by two people who've kind of studied their classics and know how to play this structure. You'll end up in an endgame like this, where what's happening here? Nothing. I really don't have anything more. There's not a lot of dynamic. You can leave. Not a lot of dynamics here, or in a whole lot of these lines. I will probably publish this study, but you can look at some interest. Like, I think this is a very interesting way to solve the problem of your bad bishop. This is something that I would recommend playing. There are some modern lines where you can actually long castle, but I haven't looked at those. For example, long castles is technically a move here. It's just bad. I know it's possible. I've seen some games in long castles, but usually it's just who's quicker with the pawns and who's created less weaknesses. For example, long castles, you can gain a tempo on their knight, and they can maybe gain a tempo on your here. But otherwise, it should be quite nice. And against this h3 line, you can play e5 if you enjoy IQP more, or you can play g6 bishop f5 if you enjoy this sort of structure. And if they play the main line, you can get some very easy play in the future. your minority attack here and just be absolutely fine. I mean, c4 can be played, but then now you have an IQP, and this is a very different thing. One takes, and you get this sort of dream position, but he has the goat role because he is the goat at calculation. Oh, g6 line, this is also a decent way to explain Pillsbury Knight. Taking is usually bad. Where is h3, g6, bishop f5, takes, bishop f4, e6, castles in knight e4, and we kind of just have this strong knight here. Maybe we have some attacking possibilities. We can trade however we want. In long castle, this is an example of a position where you can long castle with the open g file and double up here. Will probably checkmate your opponent. Taking is very inaccurate because you just reinforce this knight here. And also, they don't have a hole really here. This isn't a hole because you can just play f6 in the future. Of course not now, because this would be nasty. Theoretically, you could prepare it. Yeah, nothing more to say.